Let's now talk about maps. Maps are data structures that map keys to values. What does this mean? We have two specific things. We have keys and we have values. Before we dive into this, let's take a look at ArrayList again. So let's say we create a new ArrayList instance, and the name of the instance is MyList. And let's say we want to have 5 elements in it. The 5 elements would be strings. So we'll have A, B, C, D, and E. Since we already have instantiated MyList, let's start to add the different elements to MyList. We add using the add method. So we'll type mylist.add A, and this would add the element A to the list. We can then add B and then add C, and then let's say we add the other two as well. So what would the array list look like? We'll have the string elements in the array list in this way, and each of those elements will have an index. If we want to access any one of these elements, then we would use the index, right? Keep that in mind, because in maps, we access values using keys. Just like you use index to access an element in an array list, we use keys to access elements in a map. We use keys to access the values. So here in the array list, if we want to access C, what we would do is that we would use the index 2. We would use the method get and use the index 2 to access C. So if we type mylist.get2, that would return C for us. In the same way, if we type mylist.get4, then it would return E for us. So we use indices to access the elements in an array list. In the same way, we use keys to access values in a map. And this is what a map would look like. We'll have the 5 elements, A, B, C, D, and E, and each of those elements will have a key associated with them. Now, understand that in an array list, the elements are ordered, which means that they have a particular order that they maintain. And because they have that order, we have the indices that we can use to access them. They remain in their fixed positions, and we can control which position they're in, which is why we can access them using the indices. In a map, these elements are not necessarily ordered. Now, you see A is here and C is here. It could very well be that C is here and A is here, like this. You see, C can be here, A can be here, B can be anywhere, but their keys would still remain the same. So A still has key 1 and C still has key 3. We do not necessarily know the order when we use a map. We just need to know the key in order to access the element. So usually maps are used wherever you have a pair of things. For example, the key can be a team name and the value can be a score. Or the key can be the name of a person and the value can be their age. So whenever we have such pairs of things that we want to store, we use a map. Now understand that keys are objects that we use to access our values. So we cannot have duplicate keys. In a map, each key can map to at most one value. So that's the basics of maps. Let's start to look at the different methods that maps have. Maps should have a put method, and put method usually takes in 2 parameters. We have a key and a value. So if you put something in the map, then you have to specify their key first and then the value. So key can be any type, which is why it's denoted by K. It can be an integer, it can be a string, but all of these have to be objects. So it can be a string object, or it can be an integer object, or it can be any other type of object. In the same way, V also denotes the type of value. So V can be an integer object, a string object, or any other type of object. So the put method takes the key and the value and then stores it in the map. So this is how we insert something into a map. We can also get something from a map. If we are trying to access an element for ArrayList, we did get. In the same way, we also have a get method for map. And usually it takes 1 parameter. That parameter has to be the key. A key can be an object, as I said here, right? It can be an integer object, it can be a string object, it can be any other type of object. So any type of object can be a key. When we use get and key, the value is returned. So if this map's name was mymap, and if we wrote mymap.get key 3, then C would be returned. So we have the put method and the get method. We also have the other methods that we saw for are iterable and collection and all that, but that is in a different tree, right? Maps has its own tree. So map implements its own versions of those methods. For example, it implements its own version of the enhanced for loop method, the size method, the isEmpty method, and maps has a lot of other methods. But the most important ones are put and get, because using put, we insert an element into the map, and using get, we can retrieve an element from the map. Now, there are three kinds of maps. There is a hash map, there is a linked hash map, and there is a tree map. We will talk about hash map, and we will talk about hash map in a lot of detail. So let's get to it.